Oh, g'day champions, we've got another oddball for you. We've got a Japanese Teisco 78R from the 60s, 70s. Teisco. So these things were built as a poor man's twin. I'm not sure, back in the day there might have been some import tariff issues with getting Fenders into Japan, so they did their own little sort of bizarro world rip-off of it. So this is that. It's come in with a few issues: low volume, lack of reverb, and scratchy behaviour. The owner's done some work to it, so we'll see what's taken place and go from there. Now the writing on the front panel, it's like an thin aluminium sheet there. It's like etched, so it's actually impressed into it. Now that wouldn't be a stamp or anything, or some kind of pressing. That'd be probably a chemical photo etch process, similar to the reverse process of making a circuit board essentially, and then some silk screen put over that and the excess wiped off, and what remains is coated with a clear coat. So because it's recessed, that writing has stayed there pretty much unaffected over all the years. So it's a good way of doing it from back in the day. It's actually something you don't see very often anymore. Now, it might be a bit hard to make out here, but the vinyl's got like a glitter to it, which is really cool. It's like, it gives me vibes of like luxury dining in 1966, where, you know, instead of appetizers they bring around a plate of cigarettes. Front grille looks original. I guess it's original, I don't know. But it's pretty heavy duty. It's got like a nice heavy thread to it, and it's in pretty good nick. There's a few little nicks here and there, but as you'd expect, nothing too out of the ordinary. I've got a feeling there's a missing logo there because there's like glue residue and it's a little bit lighter in this area. So that might have been that little Teisco logo that you see. It's got the slightly kitsch sort of briefcase handle there. Pretty solid though, and it's still in one piece. Now this one's copped a few hits, and it's a pretty thin vinyl, so it hasn't really done anything to protect it. But you can see inside there that it's actually plywood, not particle board, so it's stayed dimensionally pretty stable. So that's good. And some El Cheapo cutouts there for handles, I guess. A little bit IKEA flat pack style. Now just a quick look at the back. I've removed the chassis screws to have a quick look inside, and it doesn't normally sit like that. It sits upwards. Got a little label there, Teisco guitar amp 78R. It's got these louver cuts here, so I suppose whoever built these was ex-Japanese imperial industry machinery from the era. That's got to be addressed. I think it used to have probably a two-prong plug there with a plastic strain reliever, maybe even moulded onto the plug. So I'm not sure what to do there. That's a bit of an annoying shape. We could put an IEC there, I guess, punch it out, and then have a separate cord. So that's one option. I'll ask the customer as to that. This is no good though. You can't just be tying knots in cords. That's not a proper strain relief. Well, at least it's got a fuse. Let's see what rating it is. Doesn't say what rating on there, but that is a 2 amp. So not ridiculously oversized. It's probably about right. This is wired for 117 volts at the moment. It's 100 or 117. So the Japanese stuff, they used to wire it. Well, Japan's 100 volt, and they'd also have a 120 or 117 volt in this case as well, if it got shipped to the States or other countries on that voltage. Now that looks like a button, but it's actually a pilot light. That's semi-translucent cover there. So we've got a pair of Alnico drivers here, own branded again, Teisco. Two of the same. That's probably the original wire. It looks like that's been replaced by the customer with antenna wiring. Remember that shit from your rabbit ears? So that's not suitable for speaker wiring. I'll replace that. It's got an old sort of elastic thing here. It's lost all its stretch for sticking your power cords and whatever, instrument cords. It's got a reverb tank hiding away down there. And another scary thing, there's your reverb transformer. Again with exposed primary. with HT on it, so that'll have to be addressed. I don't know what to do there, put it in a box or something. We're gonna have to do something there because we can't have just plate voltage hanging out on a open connection that you can just reach in and grab. This wiring looks a little sketchy as well. That's the that's actually the output, and that's the high impedance there. The green throws you off because normally the green is the speaker, but yeah, that's all bets are off on this one. So we'll get this chassis out and we'll have a look inside it and just give you a look at the top with the configuration of the valves and whatnot and go from there. You know what, looking at this, I think this transformer for the reverb used to be mounted here. So there's a big gap there, why don't we do that? We could mount it outside or inside if it's in the way of something in the cabinet. But yeah, that's, I reckon, what those screw holes were for. So why would you move it to the cab? That's super weird. Alright, so here's the top of the chassis. We've got two 6L6s doing the business there. We've got a 6H9C phase inverter, which is equivalent to a 6SL7, but the only schematic I got shows a 6SN7, so we'll see what the deal is there. We've got one lonely dual triode. It's, well, sorry, that's a dual triode. We've got one lonely novel dual triode. It's the only one. And the rest are 6AV6s, so a bit of a forest of 6AV6s here. I hope they're all good because they're getting a bit of a pain in the ass to find reliable versions of. There's one down there hiding by itself. Just a weird layout in general. You got a 5AR4, I'm not sure that's original as designed type. I'll check the schematic. The owner on this has done a bit of work and he's replaced the caps there, he's done a full recap. A bit of gaff tape around there to fill in the gap to the smaller diameter cap from the original. Ooh, it looks like that bracket might make it though if we bend those tabs back around, maybe put a washer in there. So yeah, we'll see that, otherwise I'll stick another bracket on there. Now this is a bit sketchy. We've got the output transformer here, and that's just a socket I've wired on there for testing, because normally it's just hardwired in the cab. But over here again you've got exposed primary, so that's not great. I'll need to do something there because I can't be accepting the liability of someone reaching in there and touching plate voltage. Got the usual frayed rubber grommets everywhere where the cables pass through for the reverb tanks, so I'll sort them out with some replacements. Maybe some strain relieving glands. Everyone wants to strain relieve their gland these days, don't they? Yeah, that was a bit of a stretch. Alright, let's flip this thing over and have a look at its guts. Even the valve shields are very nice quality. Steel. Stamped there with Matumi Electric. And a little logo there. And they're only used where they're required on this. You can see some of them don't have them, and the high gain one, or the ones further upstream do. So on the left, that's the one off the Novel valve there. Just normal, like 12A whatever. And you can see the little one for the 6AV6s, so I don't know where you'd be able to find them these days. I think they'd be rarer than the proverbial rocking horse shit. So just a quick summary of the front. It's pretty much like your Fender AB763 setup. They're a bit weird though. You got switches on the front and stuff. Things are just a bit bizarro world. Instead of input 1, 2, you've got instrument, mic and bass guitar. Bass or guitar. And you've got a switch to go between bass or guitar. So I don't know, does that make it brighter on bass or... anyway. Volume, treble, bass. And on the other channel you've got usual volume, treble, bass. You got soft and hard inputs. 12-year-old boy in me comes out. I've just been staring at this for 10 seconds trying to come up with a joke, but let's move on. We're better than that. Yeah, we've got tremolo, depth and speed, switch in the middle, echo, which is really reverb, and your pedal switch there to cancel it out. So the tremolo only works when the switch is plugged in and shorted, and the reverb only works well, for starters, when you've got a reverb tank plugged in, and transformer, but when you disconnect that from ground, it shunts the signal to ground just like a Fender. So there's that sketchy cord that we're going to have to redo. You've got switched and fused neutral there, and active going straight to the transformer, so that's the wrong way around. The customer did want an option to put a 240 volt transformer in there, so luckily it actually has your voltages and currents drawn on there, like 150 milliamp plus minus 330 volt. Now, electrical tape is always a bit of a red flag. And techs don't touch the stuff. It goes sticky, it doesn't stay where you put it. Doesn't really insulate fuck all because it's too thin. And just looks naff as well. So that will go. I'll connect them properly and heat shrink them if required, but why? It's just a pilot light, so just solder it and nothing else is heat shrunk. So it's a bit of a rat's nest. It's a combination of point-to-point and tag strip construction. There's a lot of like buses that are just like tack soldered, like so. A lot of bus wire. So I'm going to be looking as closely as I can at all of that to make sure nothing's cracked, because that would cause issues, and it's not really the most sturdy of construction. There's lots of length on a lot of those leads, not a lot of, I don't think a lot of this was thought out. They just sort of drilled the holes with the valves and went at it, which is fun. It doesn't necessarily give you the best performance in an amp. There's a cathode resistor 210 ohm, and the customer replaced 25 mic 50 volt bypass cap there on the output pair. And we've got these little dog bone resistors everywhere. That one there is a grid leak. The grid leak's mounted on the valve socket, and there's no grid stopper. So that's fun. So there are a few broken solder connections from these big honking resistors vibrating around. Just fractured leads, that kind of thing. I don't know how good this insulation paint is either, and that's HT line, and that's rattling against the chassis, so that's not great. Might be a good contender for new resistors in this area because they're so much more compact and lower mass these days, so they're not vibrating around waiting to fracture their leads. But for now, let's just go over the thing and check for any broken connections and just figure out what the issue is with the low output, and just check that everything's stable. Take some tests, come up with a plan, and go back to the customer with some pricing and some options, like for replacing that transformer with a 240 volt one. Seeing what the tank does, the reverb tank, if it's got any continuity at all, or if the springs are broken, having a visual inspection of it and giving it a test as well. Testing the speakers, obviously. Any of the big ticket stuff that's likely to end up with a job that, as someone commented in the Twin, will eat my lunch. I don't want to do that anytime soon. I don't want my lunch to be eaten. I barely even have time to eat lunch, let alone have an amp do it for me. So just anything that could be a bit of a gotcha, and go to the customer with some pricing and show a video of the finished product. But in the meantime, I'll crank it up, have a bit of a measure, and see if we can get some decent signal through it. So you may have noticed all the coupling caps everywhere have been changed with Mallory 150s. No biggie there, but I don't know why they were all replaced. I'd find it hard to believe that every single film capacitor died in this thing, but I don't know for sure. That could be a thing. It's a weird era, man. So point being, I'll just check all the values are right, because something being massively out of whack could have an effect on the output or its performance. Something being out by order of magnitude, like we all do it, particularly if you're not working on amps every day. Oh my god, it focused on a capacitor. Can you believe it? Buy a lottery ticket. But yeah, I doubt if all the values are correct, I doubt any of those Mallories are going to be giving us any issues. So what I'm more concerned about is the manner in which they've been soldered, and the fact that there's some pretty long leads there that are at risk of touching terminals where they shouldn't. So some of them could be shortened up. Right there, that one, it's been soldered right next to it, so that can affect the plastic film in the cap from heat from the soldering iron. I don't know what soldering iron he used, could have been very hot. The soldering looks okay. I spoke too soon. But you know, he's got coverage. It's not grey and gross. It's most of the solder joints are pretty shiny. Hang on, what do we have here? Alright, there's one. spoke too soon. So every solder joint in this thing's gonna have to be gone over. So I don't know what valve that is, but that would have presented an issue. It's a coupling cap that's disconnected. So I might give this thing a closer visual inspection before firing it up. Alright, I'd say we're hooked up to the life support system, except this doesn't support life, it just tells you in which way it's ceased to occur. So we'll give it some voltage. We're on the variac there. We've got the customer supplied step down transformer here as well, because I want to check that this is providing a reasonable voltage from 240 volts on the wall. So I'll control this to I'll use this to control the mains voltage, and then I'll see what this is spitting out at a given voltage of input. Turn it on, slowly bring it up. We've still got some residual voltage here happening on the B+. Bring it up, monitoring the current as we go, or the wall power draw from the mains. It's sitting around 100 volts and we're drawing 20 watts, so nothing too dramatic. Voltage is starting to rise. And the outputs are slowly starting to conduct. Alright, we'll give it some signal. Just got it into the test cap just to see if we've got any signs of life. And we do. It's promising. Slowly coming up as the voltage rises. Before we go too far, I'm just going to see what the AC input is here. 70 volts. So we'll keep going. Now the output transformer is about 220 ohms per side. So we've got the voltage drop on either side there, and we can see what they're dissipating. There's no massive imbalance and no massive runaway, so that's good. We're up to 300 volts in the B+. Where are we at on the mains? 90 volts. So this is a 117 volt transformer. So we'll go till we get 117, and we'll check our heater voltage. No smoke so far, which is good. We're at 115 volts. Let's leave it there for a minute. Very low signal. Plugging in the other input. Same. Plug into the soft input. Same. Plug into the hard input. Same. It's a very low level. Okay, I'm a fucking idiot. So standby was on. So the switch was on, making contact, right? And standby switch, you think, oh, that's HT, right? Wrong. So have a look at the schematic here. The standby just shunts the two lines out of the phase inverter together. So because there is some inherent resistance and probably not exactly symmetrical circuit, we were getting signal but at a very low level. So I assumed the amp was in play mode and had other issues, but that was not the case. It was a standby switch just doing what it was designed to do. Alright, now we've got some crackling. Probably valve socket related. Moving the valves around stopped it. Yeah, the whole thing needs a good old clean. But we'll play it out of standby mode now and see what it sounds like. I mean, that broken connection we found was a thing. Like, that would have had some pretty heavy issues. But the main issue was me being an idiot. So let's take it out of standby. Turn everything down again because it's probably going to blow our heads off. Alright, straight away, quite a bit of hum. A lot of hum. Reverb oscillating because it's not connected to anything. EQ not affecting hum. Lots of crackling from the sockets. That one's pretty microphonic. I think that's a reverb return. Gotta be careful putting our hand under this thing because we've got those bare connections. Don't do anything that I do. Don't even turn the amp on. Just go and have a Kit Kat and watch TV. So lots of hum, that's because it doesn't have a balanced heater supply. So that's another problem. We've also got the shields off. If we did have a balanced heater supply, it's a cathode biased amp, so it would lend itself to heater elevation, and possibly look at some of the lead dress as well. But that's quite a bit of hum at the moment, for not a lot of ripple on the supply. And quite a bit of microphonics just tapping on the chassis there as well. But let's pretend for a moment that the noise isn't unbearable, which it pretty much is. That's probably the noisiest amp I've ever had in, other than like a fault, but this is noisy by design. That was acceptable in 1972 in Japan, or whenever this thing was built. EQ works. Keep going to plug in over here from Fender preconditioning. My nasty Yankee mannerisms. Alright, that was a hard input. Oops, soft input. Alright, so it sounds good, except for that hum. A lot of hiss. Microphonics to the point it's picking up my voice. That's bad, especially because it's a combo. So look, I think we've got enough. I always say this and I always get screwed, but I think we've got enough to go on to issue a quote. I've just got to check the reverb and the speakers, so we'll do that shortly. But in terms of the chassis, I think I know the plan of action. It's just a matter of throwing a dart on the price. With these old amps, you're pretty much throwing a dart, let's be honest. Alright, I hope you got your headphones or your fully 6 subwoofers working, because we're hitting that with about 25 Hz at the moment, sine wave. Barely be able to hear it, but what you will be able to hear is rattling. That's the pole, that's the voice coil former. That's the voice coil former moving in this cavity here, and it's got a pole piece in the middle. When you distort it, it goes away. Now it's not touching. So that could be a distortion of the frame from a drop. It could be overheating from being driven too hard and deforming the voice coil former. But you push it the other way and it gets worse. So that will add some upper harmonic distortion to the signal. I might just make the customer aware of it and say, look, let's try it out, let's see how bad it is with guitar signal. Just factor in possibly upgrading that speaker, or both of them. They seem to have pretty wide response, but we won't know until we pump some actual guitar playing through it with this output stage on this amp and the whole kit and caboodle to know how they work together. But I'll just make him aware of this issue. He might let it slide for now and see how bad it is later once the amp's complete. So there you go, champions. Not a complete basket case, this one, but it's going to be quite a bit of work, and it's still just going over all the joints and making everything a bit less tack soldery, a little bit more reliable. Basically rebuilding the heater circuit to make it less hummy, reducing the noise where we can. That could mean replacing some resistors, possibly a valve or two. So we'll have a look. We're kind of limited as to where we can get 6 AV6s from, but we'll have a look around. I think I've got 1 or 2 here, new old stock. So we'll try them out, but it could just be the architecture of the amp that we could possibly change and see what's involved. I don't want to redesign this thing. We're not going full in another full rebuild like this bloody Twin that took a week. But I would like to get the noise down to an acceptable level, and as far as I'm concerned at the moment, that's not acceptable. That's pretty annoying. It would be noticeable between songs in a bar full of people chatting. It's that annoying. So I'll leave it here, legends. I'll see you on the next one when I've hopefully done all the work, and you can poke fun at me for whatever you feel like. Well, this is interesting. Removed pretty much everything except for the recovery stage after the mixing stage and the phase inverter. So literally every other valve's removed. So somehow we're still getting more noise when we turn the volume up. And there's a null point on channel 1 where the hum gets less. So we've got some grounding issues too. This is going to be a fun one. Alright, so everything but the phase inverter and the output valves is removed, and we've still got a horrible hum. Sort of like a buzzy hum. Alright, so I couldn't help myself. I'm just on the hunt for the sources of this noise. I've got some temporary heater balance resistors in there, elevated by the cathode from the outputs. I've lifted the PI ground. That resistor just fell apart as I removed it. It's got these hair thin leads, all of these components do, so you touch them a few times and they just fall apart. Sorry it's a bit dark in here. I've turned off the lighting because it's powered by a switch mode power supply and results in a higher amount of hiss and noise. Now this is very susceptible to picking up hiss. That's not actually hiss. A lot of that is just RF being picked up from Wi-Fi and phones and the computer, and it's all around us. When you put that on there, that's effectively shielding it from there. There's still a bit of hum because of our grounds not being ideal still. There's also lead dress is an issue. Some of the signal lines run in line and right across heater lines, so it's picking up some hum from there as well. This is going to be a death by 1,000 cuts in terms of the noise issues. It's just so poorly laid out and poorly designed. It's a really poorly designed amp, to be honest, and it's very susceptible to noise, RF pickup. Like, look at that. That's really sensitive. I can just see there being issues and stuff further down the line that I won't be happy with unless I sort it out. So I'm gonna give him a price that will reflect an amplifier I'll be happy to play and own, because I don't really want my name going to anything less than that. So I'll leave it here, legends, and catch you on the next one when hopefully we're a bit closer to having this thing complete and we can do some sound samples, you know, the usual deal. And hopefully Lyle releases a video soon so I don't have to keep releasing them to keep you guys entertained. So I'll see you on the next one. Take it easy, get a dog up here. Well, would you look at that? Working on a Japanese amp and Japanese whiskey turns up. Maybe it's not such a shit week after all. A gift from Mount Fuji. How come I had to pay for it? Exclusivity that anyone can buy.